Roll Tide, roll! Happy Sunday morning, boys and girls. It's your old pal, Andy France, the grand poobah of Judson Sunday School. Welcome back to another episode and a new year of virtual Judson Sunday School. How are you? I haven't seen you in like forever. How were your holidays? Mine were good. I got a little bit of rest, read a lot of books. Some didn't even have pictures. And, as you may be able to tell from the way I'm dressed and some of my accoutrement, I got to watch my favorite college football team, the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, beat the living snot out of every team they faced on their way to yet another national championship. Roll, Tide, roll. That's a little something we say, us fans of Alabama. I thought we might start this first Sunday lesson in the new year off with perhaps a short tutorial on how you might one day go to the University of Alabama for your own college experience. Now, sure, there are better schools out there, academically speaking, but what are you going to do on Saturdays? Study? Please. Saturdays are for college football. Now, because it's literally across the street from us here at Judson, some of you might have been thinking about going to NYU when you go off to college. And that's a good school. Some of your parents teach there, and so tuition costs would be next to nothing. And they do play sports, but not football. However, before you go to NYU, you might want to know what their nickname is. They're called the Violets, not the violence. The Violets, as in the flower. Bless their hearts. How in the world are you going to beat the living snot out of anybody when you're known as the Fighting Violets? Alabama, on the other hand, is known as the Crimson Tide, as in a great big red crimson wave's going to roll all over you. Plus, we have a mascot, Big Al, the elephant. Here he is right here. There's Big Al. Well, he's actually a lot bigger than this guy, and I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what an elephant's doing riding a wave, surfing maybe, but anyway, he's an elephant. He's a lot tougher than a flower, right? Now, some of you might have been thinking about going to another good school here in New York City, Columbia University, and it is a good school, and they do play football. However, it's in the Ivy League. I've been to a few Ivy League games in my day. It's kind of like watching bad middle school football down south. Just pitiful, pitiful. The Ivy League has teams like Columbia and Harvard and Yale, Dartmouth and Princeton. There's a great Southern writer by the name of Roy Blunt who once compared the annual Harvard-Yale football game to watching a panel discussion. Boring. There's another Southern writer, Rick Bragg, who once said, somewhere a regular season loss is not the end of the world. There are such things as moral victories and good college tries. But not in Tuscaloosa, the home of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, the national champions who went undefeated this year. Undefeated! Undefeated, coincidentally, just happens to be our word of the day. Let me lose some of these pom-poms here. Undefeated. Now, what do we mean by the word undefeated? Well, I'll give you a tip for those future college English majors out there. First, choose a different major. You're never going to make a dime as an English major, trust me. Second, this prefix, let me move my little football. This prefix, un, U-N, means not. And so anytime you have this prefix before a standalone word, it means not whatever that word is. So if you have a word like unimportant, it means not important. Or unprepared means not prepared. Undefeated, not defeated. In sports, that means you won every game. You didn't lose once that whole season. Now, having an undefeated season is very rare. It does happen occasionally in college sports. Yay, Alabama, Crimson Tide. But it almost never happens in professional sports. For example, in baseball, it's never happened. Not even the New York Yankees have gone undefeated. In hockey, never happened. In basketball, not even Michael Jordan and those great Chicago Bull teams went undefeated. And in football, in 100 years of professional football, there's only been one undefeated team, the Miami Dolphins of 1972. But that's it. That's just sports. But in real life, no one goes undefeated. We all suffer the occasional loss. The question is, what do we do after that loss? Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell you kids about how tough life is, you kids of the pandemic. Hey, that sounds like a scary Halloween movie. Children of the corn, children of the pandemic. Anyway, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that life is hard and that we all suffer occasional losses. But like I said, what do we do when we've suffered that loss? What do we do when we've been knocked down on our backside? Do we stay down? Do we stay defeated? Or do we learn from that defeat? Do we dust ourselves up, rise up off the ground, dust ourselves off, and get back in the game? The great poet Maya Angelou, whom you might remember her poem Amazing Peace that we read this past December, she once said, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. It may even be necessary to encounter the defeat so that we can know who we are, so that we can see, oh, that happened, and I rose. I got knocked down flat in front of the whole world, and I rose." Well, boys and girls, traditionally the month of February is known as African American History Month, a month in which we celebrate the accomplishments and contributions of African Americans to the history of the United States. This all started all the way back in 1926, almost 100 years ago, when it was known as Negro History Week. This week was later expanded to a month in 1976 by Gerald Ford. Now, it was originally chosen to be in February because it contained the birthdays of both Frederick Douglass, the leader of the abolitionist movement, which sought to end slavery, and it also had the birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, the president who did end slavery. We at Judson Sunday School say, hey, why wait to February, a month that traditionally finds you guys on the road for at least 1 or 2 Sundays as you go off to celebrate your own winter school break? So why don't we begin our own African American History Month today on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday? I can think of no better introduction to studying African American history than our first story, which is actually a poem written by Kwame Alexander and beautifully illustrated by Kadir Nelson called The Undefeated. Ooh, look at that. How about that? Undefeated. Alabama Crimson Tide, undefeated. Word of the day, undefeated. That's called symmetry, kids. Anyway, there are a lot of pictures in this book. Some of the faces you may not know. And so, with apologies to Mr. Alexander and Mr. Nelson, I'm going to go off script on occasion and just fill in some of the gaps, tell you a little something about some of the people we see on these pictures. Keep in mind that everyone we talk about in this book was defeated at some point in their life. They suffered various losses, but they did not let those defeats define them. They remain undefeated. Let's read it, The Undefeated. This is for the unforgettable, the swift and sweet ones who hurdled history and opened a world of possible. Do you know who this is? This is Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens was once the fastest human being on the planet. He won 4 gold medals at the Olympic Games in Berlin of 1936. Now, what does 1936 and Berlin mean to some of you history buffs? Who was in charge? Adolf Hitler, who had this idea about the Aryan race, the white race, being superior to all the other races. Jesse Owens came along and busted that myth wide open. The ones who survived America by any means necessary. And the ones who didn't. This is for the undeniable, the ones who scored with chains on one hand and faith in the other. Do you know who this is? This is Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was the first African American to win the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship. He did it in 1908. And for the next 13 years, Jack Johnson was the most famous African American in the world. Jack Johnson fought in an era of unbelievable racism, when even newspapers, prestigious newspapers like the New York Times, were calling out for a great white hope, some white boxer, any white boxer who could defeat Jack Johnson and thus establish the superiority of the white race. This is for the unflappable, the sophisticated ones who box adversity and tackle vision. Who shine their light for the world to see and don't stop till the break of dawn. On these 2 pages, we have pictures of various artists, writers, sculptors, painters, who were all a part of the Harlem Renaissance, a sort of golden age of African American art in the 1920s and 30s. Pictured here are the poet Langston Hughes, the writer, novelist Zora Neale Hurston. There are sculptors and painters. And then right here, I don't know if you can see him, this is Jacob Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence came along a little after the Harlem Renaissance, but his series of paintings, called the Migration Series, let me just show you. I have that book. His series of paintings, called the Migration Series, depicted African Americans migrating from the South in order to escape the horrible segregation conditions and poverty conditions they were in, migrating to northern cities like Chicago and Detroit and New York City in search of a better life. Jacob Lawrence's work can be seen at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, and just this summer, when it reopened, I was at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, to see other works by Jacob Lawrence. He is a fantastic painter, and I hope you will get a chance to see some of his paintings included in the Migration Series. But I digress. Let me get back to this book. This is for the unafraid, the audacious ones who carried the red, white, and weary blues on the battlefield to save an imperfect union. Audacious means risk-taking, bold. Some 209,000 black men fought in the Civil War on the Union side, helping to defeat the Confederate Army. the righteous marching ones who sang, "We shall not be moved." Do you know that song? We shall not be moved, because black lives matter. The gentleman on the end is John Lewis. We're going to talk about John Lewis next week. I can't wait. I sure hope you can see this picture well. This is for the unspeakable. Can you see what this is? Slavery in America lasted for some 300 years. Between 10 and 12 million Africans were captured and kidnapped, basically, thrown into the holds of slave ships and carried across the sea in the most brutal, horrible conditions imaginable. They were literally stacked up like wood, as you can see in these pictures. Historians estimate that somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 25% of these Africans did not make the journey. They died along the way, which means something like in the neighborhood of 1 in 4 died. This is for the unspeakable. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Carol Denise McNair, 4 little girls killed in the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963 by the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist domestic terrorist organization. Dr. King once called Birmingham, or talked about Birmingham at that time, as the most segregated city in the world. In fact, it was nicknamed Bombingham for all of the attacks on black businesses and churches. But this particular bombing, killing these 4 little girls in church and wounding many more, was so horrific, it marked a turning point in the civil rights movement. This is for the unspeakable. And we can see that the killing of innocent African American children continues today. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, and others. You recognize him? That's Dr. King. Our second story today will be about Dr. King. This is for the unlimited, unstoppable ones, the dreamers and doers who swim across the big sea of our imagination and show us the majestic shores of the promised land. We have a lot of athletes here. The Wilma Rudolphs, the Muhammad Alis, the Althea Gibsons, the Jesse Owenses, the Jordans and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Reese Whitleys, and the undiscovered. This is for the unbelievable, the real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night is beautiful ones. Jazz musicians, pianist and composer Thelonious Monk, Duke Ellington, trumpet players Miles Davis, Louis Armstrong, and singers Billie Holiday, the great Sarah Vaughan, and the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald. Have you seen the movie Soul yet? It's about a jazz pianist. In a few weeks, we're going to talk about soul and jazz music, and who knows, we might even get to Ella Fitzgerald. This is for the underdogs and the uncertain, the unspoken, but no longer untitled. This is for the undefeated. This is for you and you and you. This is for us. The undefeated. Boys and girls, do you remember the song by Tom Waits, Little Trip to Heaven? We just started learning it last September, and then we had to put it on the shelf so we could get on with our Christmas song. But it's time to dig it back out. So in your weekend email to your parents, I included another copy of the lyrics and another copy of the picture lyrics. So you're welcome to get those to sing along with, to have those printed out to sing along with. And today what we'll do is just the first verse, and I will take us through the picture lyrics again because, well, goodness gracious, it's been since September since we did this song. So here we go. From the top, we've got Stuart Little, Trip to Heaven. It goes, little trip to heaven. On, you've got on the wings of your love. On the wings of your love. We've got a banana, a moon, shoe shine in the sky. Banana moon is shining in the sky. Then you've got an I, a feelings chart. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. Anyway, you don't even know what that is. I feel like, there's the old like you like something on Facebook. I'm in heaven. By the way, that cartoon has, on the gates of heaven, it says, no atheists. And the guy at the gate says, I can't believe it. So anyway, I feel like I'm in heaven. I feel like I'm in heaven. Turn the page. Win, spelled differently, but she's winning a race. So it's win, you and are, you're with. That young woman is with child, with me, despicable me. When you're with me. I know, whenever we have that red slash, it's know, spelled differently, but you know what? I know that I'm in heaven again. I can't believe it. I know that I'm in heaven when, the letter U, smile. When you smile. Though, the, TH gives a the sound with an O. Though we've got a we thing there. And we've got Winnie the Pooh is stuck. Though we're stuck here. Arrows in the ears. It's different spelling, but who cares? On switch, the groundhog. Though we're stuck here on the ground. Turn the page to page 3. I got something. I got milk. I got dim sum. I got something. Our character thing. That I found. Lost and found. And it's, I do not miss that it costume one bit. But that I found and it's you. That's enough for the first day. Let's take it from the top a couple of times, all right? Let me get my pages in order. From the top, little trip to heaven on the wings of your love. Ready? Little trip to heaven on the wings of your love. Banana moon is shining in the sky. I feel like I'm in heaven. Turn the page. When you're with me, I know that I'm in heaven when you smile. Though we're stuck here on the ground, turn the page to page 3. I got something that I found, and it's you. Let's do it one more time from the top. 1, 2, ready, sing. Little trip to heaven on the wings of your love. Banana moon is shining in the sky. I feel like I'm in heaven when you're with me. I know that I'm in heaven when you smile. Though we're stuck here on the ground, turn the page. I got something that I found, and it's you. Hey, that's not bad for the first time back. We'll get on with the second verse. I think there are 3 or 4 verses to this thing. I don't know. I haven't looked at the whole thing since September myself, but we'll get back to more of it next week. Thanks for singing. Well, tomorrow is a federal holiday, which means no school for you. That's terrific, right? It's the day we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, we have certainly talked a lot about Dr. King over the years at Judson Sunday School. We've read more than our share of books about Dr. King. I'm sure some of you remember that Dr. King was born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He grew up in the segregated South. Do you know what segregation means? I'm sure you do. It means separate. African Americans were not allowed to mix with whites. They couldn't enjoy the same benefits as white people could. So you had separate neighborhoods and separate schools, churches, hotels, restaurants, bathrooms, drinking fountains, etc. Dr. King came to understand segregation and racism at a very early age. When he was only 6 years old, his best friend, who was white, told him they could no longer play together because Martin was black. Dr. King grew up to become a preacher like his father and his grandfather before him. Let's see, what else do I have to tell you about him? He became the preeminent leader of the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. I'm sure you know that civil rights are equal rights for everyone, regardless of the color of their skin or the differences in sexual orientation, sex, or whatever it might be. Dr. King believed in something known as nonviolent resistance, which is just peaceful protest, something he learned from those New Testament gospel stories of Jesus and from the teachings of Mohandas Gandhi, the leader of India's fight for independence from British rule. Now, in my Sunday school classes, we have talked a lot about how Dr. King was similar to those Old Testament prophets. Do you remember those names? Jeremiah, Zechariah, Zephaniah, Obadiah, Mariah Carey, Habakkuk, Chewbacca, Tobacco. Wait, that didn't sound right. You know, I could have got those names wrong. It's been like forever since I've read the Old Testament. But regardless, prophets believed and said that prophets claimed to speak on behalf of God. We, even though Dr. King is no longer with us, his words and his spirit live on inside you and in me. Now, how is that possible? How are the words and the spirit of Dr. King, how are they inside you and how are they inside me? I don't know. Let's find out by reading our next story, Be a King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Dream and You, by Carol Boston Weatherford, illustrated by James E. Ransom. Let me find the right page here. This book actually begins with a quotation about service, the idea of helping others. I'll just read it like this. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Martin Luther King, Jr. You can be a king, marvel at creation, keep the faith of your ancestors. To marvel is to wonder, to be astonished. You can be a king, know that bigotry hurts. Remember how you felt when treated unfairly. Bigotry is treating someone unfairly because of on the basis of their race or their sex or whatever it might be. And I believe in this picture we have a depiction of young Martin being told he can no longer play with his friend. You can be a king. Admit that you've done wrong. Just say, I'm sorry, and mean it. You can be a king. Know that dividing walls should come down. You have glimpsed the other side. You can be a king. Break the chains of ignorance. Learn as much as you can. And this is Morehouse College, where Dr. King went when he was only 15 years old. Get cracking, you slackers. You can be a king. Stand for peace. Band together against bullies. You can be a king. Sing a song of freedom. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. That bus look familiar, maybe? You can be a king. Stamp out hatred. Put your foot down and walk tall. You can be a king. Answer your critics. Believe in your cause and state it plainly. You can be a king. Have a dream. Make yours great enough to grow into. And this is Dr. King in front of the Lincoln Memorial at the 1963 March on Washington, the site of his I Have a Dream speech. You can be a king. Make the world take notice. Do your very best at whatever you do. You can be a king. Beat the drum for justice. March to your own conscience. This is the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which is featured in our stories about John Lewis, which we will talk about next week. You can be a king. Lift up the less fortunate. Be the king or queen of help. You can be a king. Set your sights on the mountaintop. Climb a little higher every day. Be a king. Well, we've done it again, boys and girls. It looks like we've somehow managed to get through yet another episode of Virtual Judson Sunday School. Just a couple of announcements before we say goodbye. Last week, I asked your parents to send me a video about a time when you got in trouble. You telling the story of a time you got in trouble. Now, we're not looking to embarrass anyone. Hopefully it's something funny you did, or maybe it's something funny you thought was funny at the time. But we're going to run those trouble videos in next Sunday's episode about John Lewis. So I would like you to send those videos to me by tomorrow. I've already gotten a few in. They're very funny. So thank you to those who've sent them to me already. If you haven't, please feel free and make one today and get it to me by tomorrow. You can email it to Andrew France, FRANTZ, the number 1, @gmail.com. Thanks so much. Our second announcement is this. Some of you might recall 4 years ago, this coming June, how some of us put on goofy-looking Trump wigs, and we sang City of Immigrants in defiance of the new president. It's been a long 4 years, and we have suffered many losses along the way, but we are not defeated. This Wednesday, you can tune in and watch the inauguration of a new president, Wednesday at noon. I hope you will. I want to thank Andre and Michelle, as always, for all their help putting this episode together. And I want to thank you for being with me, for starting off a new year with me as well. Until we meet again, have a great week. Stay safe, please, more now than ever. Keep a place for Judson in your heart. And I'll see you next time on Virtual Judson Sunday School. Hey, roll, Tide, roll.